Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined this week by Thad Greenson, news editor, and Jennifer Fumiko-Cahill, arts and features editor at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
How you doing, Dave?
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Pretty
Staying warm?
good. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I got like snow flurries, and it feels like we're not in Humboldt right now.
It was coming down heavy in McKinleyville earlier, like big nickel-size flakes too.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's I mean, we knew it was coming, and it's not going to accumulate by the coast, but still pretty wild out there.
Everybody slow down driving, please.
Great advice.
Yeah, follow Caltrans advice too, that if you don't have to go out, don't.
Like my foolish self that came to work today. What was I thinking?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. For all those folks out there who have to drive for work, just like you said, be safe. Well, why don't we just dive in now and take a look at the cover? I guess I should ask Jen, what is on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Mochi. Mochi is on the cover. I speak not of the delightful Japanese dessert. I speak instead of Mochi the dog, who is some kind of husky with these ice blue eyes, just looking very fluffy and sweet. And yes, do you want to just rub your face in his fur? Of course you do, because this is the pet photo issue. And this year, last year, everybody just sent in entries. And this year we had a small entry fee that was like a nominal fee to raise money for Miranda's rescue. Yay, Humboldt, from raising money for Miranda's rescue. And we were a little scared at first. We were like, oh, are people not going to want to do it with a fee? But in fact, pet lovers did want to send in their photos and did want to contribute to Miranda's rescue and the lovely work they do over there. So Mochi is our grand winner here on the cover page. And
Best in show.
Yes, our best in show. Mochi also appears, by the way, in the kindest eyes, even though he's given teeth in that picture. He's adorable. Oh, wait, did I misgender Mochi? I'm not sure. Mochi could be either. Both. Indeterminate gender. Above all of that, honestly. But there are a ton of categories, including Cute Overload, Big Trouble. To give you an idea of the Big Trouble entries, the winner is a little white, I don't know, is he like a poodle Bichon thing, named Charlie, who is surrounded by what looks like the shreds of Christmas, destroyed by a little dog.
That's right.
There's an entry for old dogs. There's an entry for highest on life and highest maintenance. They are very different. The one that won highest maintenance is sitting on a recliner on a fur pad that I can only describe as a throne. There are some really great non-traditional pets, and mostly they are doing like, you know, outdoorsy stuff or whatever, but there's, I think, a falcon. I don't know. There's some sort of bird. The birders are going to call and be like, no, dummy, it's a, except for Sarah Hobart, which we'll come to later because she's a very nice bird lady. But there are dogs in canoes. There are cats with all kinds of shenanigans happening around them, including in the category of the face only a mother could love. I defy you not to love them a little bit. There are some sibling pets, which we love, snuggling animals. It's just very like, cleanse your mind this week. Just take a break. We are all going through something. Cleanse your mind and just dive into these pet photos and really enjoy them. I would like to say that so these were voted for by our readers. The winners, we don't determine them. But the intro is written by our perhaps our greatest pet enthusiast in all of the North Coast Journal. I just want you to know that it was written by someone who truly, truly loves pets, and that is Kali Koziris, who you might know with a normal speaking voice, but if you ever see her around a pet, she descends into the pet voice and becomes another person. I have never seen anyone who loves her dogs more. And in fact, when we were wooing her away from her old employer to steal her to work for NCJ, we had her come into the office to kind of get a feel for the place. And we put up a framed picture of a pug on the wall where she would be working to like lure her in. And we were just like, oh, that's always been there.
We speak your language, right?
Sealed the deal.
Yeah. But she's a tremendous pet lover. And we honestly love anytime we can like let her loose and have her write about pets, we do it because she's very fun and she's very enthused about all of these. And we're very glad that she didn't have to choose because we never, as Thad pointed out, we never would have made it to press. She would still be like baby talking to pictures on her screen. We'd never have gotten there. But yes, so it's a delight to have her introduce them. They're a delight to go through. And also, shout out to Schatz the cat. You were robbed. Whoever Schatz's owner is, the cat that's kind of like this.
Yeah.
I see you, man. Only.
You could relate to that little snarl of Grumpy Cat, in the inner Grumpy Cat.
I was like, you and me, buddy. If Schatz ever needs a place to crash for a while, just hit me up. But yes, go dive into it, enjoy it, and treat yourself. If you go and look on our website, though, you can still look at all the entrants. You can no longer vote, but you can scroll through all the entrants and see my homie Schatz under big trouble. And I think it's worth it. And just heal your soul. Enjoy it. You deserve this.
In the intro, Kylie said photo gold.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that says it all right there.
Humboldt has some kind of good pet photographers.
Well, this is great, and I'm glad that you guys have agreed. You've decided to post all the photos because I'm sure tons of people are going to go check it out.
Yes, they're full of joy. Right
on. Thad, why don't you tell us what you've got going on the news beat this week?
Yeah, this week we have one of the stories we have is looking and trying to figure out what happened with a Eureka attempted murder arrest where the suspect was exonerated. So this was something that we noticed when it happened. There were some media reports about what sounded like a really gruesome domestic violence call and arrest. Gentleman Matthew Solomon was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder of his wife back in December, and then in January, there was just a really short news report in the Times-Standard noting that prosecutors had dismissed all the charges against Mr. Solomon, and not just that, but had really said in court that they had determined that he was in fact innocent of the charges, which prosecutors don't generally say. It's a much different determination than not guilty or not enough evidence, and so the case against him was dismissed, and I kind of embarked on several weeks of just trying to talk to various agencies involved to figure out exactly what happened there. And it's a sordid story.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And in fact, I do recall hearing about it before, and I don't remember exactly where, but this is very different from what I guess you would imagine happens in an attempted murder charge. But one of the things that you pointed out in the article is that there was a good reason that the detectives and I guess the DA's office determined that true innocence was there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot kind of went into the investigation that exonerated Mr. Solomon, but the kind of the crux of it is they were able to determine that he was not in his apartment at the time that his wife was stabbed, and in fact that they allege anyway, that his wife's stab wounds were self-inflicted. And the DA's office is currently kind of determining whether to bring a false report charge against Krista Myers, Mr. Solomon's wife. But they were able to determine that they believed that the wounds themselves, based on the wound pattern and kind of the various aspects of the cuts, that they were self-inflicted by Miss Myers herself, but then also that Mr. Solomon wasn't in the apartment at the time. He was with his kids. His alibi is kind of corroborated by GPS coordinates on his phone. And then that there was other evidence at the scene that they were able to determine was just not consistent with the story of a domestic assault.
And there's an insinuation that like some cameras somewhere helped them to determine this.
Yeah, police don't often want to share their tricks and their secrets. So I was talking to Captain LaFrance at the Eureka Police Department and trying to get him to kind of explain exactly what they saw at the scene that didn't kind of add up, and he wouldn't quite go there, but he said, in general, these are the kinds of things we look for at a crime scene to corroborate a victim statement. And so he was saying, they compare the victim statement with other witness statements, with neighbor statements and stuff, and then they also look at surveillance camera footage, any that they can find, not just at the residence, but in neighboring residences and stuff. And so he said, for instance, one thing we would look for is if there's a parking lot or a parking space that is captured in surveillance footage, like whether somebody's car was actually there at the time that it was supposed to be. But we actually found a sworn declaration from Mr. Solomon's ex-wife that he had picked up their kids in Fortuna about 45 minutes before the call came in alleging that, or the medical aid call came in from Miss Myers. So it's like I said, it's a sordid story, and it's kind of made all the more complicated by the fact that Miss Myers is the sister of a deputy district attorney in the Humboldt County District Attorney's Office. So that kind of changes the way that they can handle the case, and they have to be kind of extra careful to keep it private within the office so that there's no kind of undue influence and stuff like that.
Christmas is going to be weird.
Forever.
Yeah. It is definitely one of those stories that is the stuff of fiction, but somehow happens here in Humboldt County.
I was just going to add that the title of the article is Irreconcilable Differences, and that correlates pretty well with holidays will never be the same, probably.
It should be noted that Mr. Solomon has filed for a legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences.
Well, there's more in there, so hopefully people check it out. I think it's a really interesting read, especially about the DA's office and kind of the steps that they've taken. But why don't you tell us what else you got going on this week on the news beat?
Yeah, the other story we have in this week is about the state of California's kind of first ever, which is kind of mind-boggling on its own, but its first ever attempt at a comprehensive assessment of the state's homeless response. The Interagency Council on Homelessness, I think it's called, took a 3-year look at California's homeless response and through all of its various programs to try to kind of gauge, their effectiveness and also the total cost. And one thing that the story, points out, it's a story from Cal Matters, I should point out, or I should add, but is that, 9 state agencies work on addressing homelessness in California, as well as virtually all, city and county governments. And this is the first time there's been an attempt at kind of a global assessment of what all that entails, what all that costs, and how it's going, which is kind of mind-boggling to me, given how long homelessness has been a significant and a growing issue in California. But yeah, so that was kind of the endeavor, and then just a week or so ago, the council kind of released its first report.
So pretty big report, over 250 pages. One of the takeaways, not to ruin your the bury the lead here or anything, but it looks like about $10 billion serving over 500,000 people. And this over 3 years, and the state still has over 500,000 people that are homeless. So what kind of stood out to you about the report, and kind of what items that we could look toward to guide us for the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, just what you said is that that $10 billion is a lot of money, and the problem has not gotten better, but has in fact gotten worse. So I think that is whether you want to view that as a condemnation of the state's response or just evidence that this is a really, really complex ingrained social issue that is going to take a really concerted effort to address, whichever kind of way you want to view it. It's clear that there's a lot of work to do if we are going to address it. So, I mean, some things that I found really interesting is, that these state programs were successful in housing 40% of the homeless population of the 500,000 people that they tracked over this 3-year period. Which is, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. It's not insignificant by any stretch. And the issue really, it was not that these folks, then fell back into homelessness. The folks that were housed, those programs were by and large successful in keeping them housed. The issue was that in that same time period, more and more people became homeless. And so, I thought that was a really interesting takeaway. Certainly, it needs to be noted that homelessness, is disproportionately affects certain demographics and certain populations. So the study found that, that Black Californians and Native Californians were affected by homelessness at a disproportionate rate of 5 times that of other populations.
Wow.
And then, I thought another, interesting point, which is, I think just people need to remember as we talk about homelessness as kind of, I think a lot of folks fall into thinking it's this monolith, and it always looks like the chronic homelessness that is most visible when we're passing through a city or whatnot. But in actuality, homelessness takes lots and lots of different forms, and everything from couch surfing to sleeping in a car and those kinds of things. And so when we talk about it, we can't talk about it as a singular population. We also can't talk about it as there being one response that is going to be effective in preventing it or rehousing people.
Interestingly, it looks like about just rough math, about 15% of the people got permanent supportive housing, and only of those, only 8% wound up back on the street within 6 months. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty good. That means that when they do have a comprehensive plan, it's working.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't covered in the story, but we have very much seen that in other areas, that housing first as a response philosophy. It's been trialed in everywhere from Utah to New York, and it takes a huge investment, but it has been really successful where that investment has been made. And that is what you're talking about, kind of permanent supportive housing with wraparound services.
Yeah. So anything else stand out to you or next steps alluded to after this report?
Yeah, I mean, I think next steps are, is viewing this report as kind of a launch pad for further study of the issue and the effectiveness of programs. And then, ultimately, hopefully, more coordination and more targeted investment on the programs that are proving effective, and more, more cooperation between these 9 state agencies, city and county governments, as opposed to having a 52 points of light approach of really honing in on a coordinated effort, utilizing the strategies that are most effective. And hopefully that will, both make these outreach efforts more cost effective, but then also just more effective in getting people housed, keeping them housed, and going back to that number of newly homeless, really preventing homelessness in the first place and finding intervention programs that keep people from losing their housing at all.
Well, thank you so much for covering it. Massive challenge, it's like a coordination challenge that looks like there's funding, and hopefully there's also attention and follow through. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Look forward to hearing more about it. Jen, why don't you tell us what is going on the arts and features beat besides the cover story?
We're going to the beach. And
Nice.
When I say we're going to the beach, not in swimsuits. We are going with, first of all, Sarah Hobart, our birding writer, who also writes about pets and loves good boys and girls. But Sarah has written a story about shorebirds. It's sort of like a part 2. She did a shorebird story recently. And I learned some things about shorebirds. which is not hard because I know nothing about birds. I just look back at those animals that I identified as some sort of falcon, and I think they might be chickens. Anyway, so anyway, she's talking about what exactly, generally a shorebird, they're not so impressive, she says, individually usually. Typically you see them in flocks, right? So you see like sandpipers. I knew that one, but mostly because of the Elizabeth Taylor movie. Plovers, etc. And they move in these big flocks. And, they kind of look like they're glowing because the sun reflects off of their white bellies, which also happens when I wear a bikini. So then she talks about these individual shorebirds that are very cool looking. They're not all kind of dun, boring little birds. The American avocet is one that she mentions. She mentions many. I'm just going to give you a couple of my favorites. So they come in groups of 50 or more, and they have these little skinny legs. And they do this thing with their bill where they sweep back and forth into, I guess, the sand and water, and they're trying to stir up creatures. Like how menacing children at the beach will stir up creatures and capture them in buckets, except they're going to eat them. And they're really kind of lovely. They move in these big groups and kind of move back and forth with the water, as we've all seen. Another one that she mentions that's kind of cool is called the black oyster catcher. One guess what it does.
I'm thinking it catches oysters.
That it does. And it does so with a big red bill, or maybe it's not big, but it's bright. A red bill that is blade-like. I would not have thought that a little bird would be able to crack open an oyster. Like otters are out here with rocks, but this bird kind of, I guess, shucks.
Yeah, I was going to say, we struggle to shuck ourselves with tools.
Does better than I do at a barbecue. Cracks open the shellfish with its beak and eats. And apparently they make a wheep, wheep sound. So if you hear them, number one, that's where the oyster's at. But also, and I would imagine clams and other shellfish. But that's our black oyster catcher. And I also learned, let me ask you, Dave, have you ever been taken on a snipe hunt?
No, I had not heard that until I saw this.
Okay, there's an old expression where they call something a snipe hunt, and it's like a wild goose chase, right? Hunters will take someone out and say they're hunting for snipe, or, it's sort of a thing that your Boy Scouts troop leader might tease you with. And it's a made-up animal that you go hunt for. And on the one hand, I don't think Sarah Hobart would lie to me when she says that a snipe is in fact a real bird, Wilson's snipe in particular. But on the other hand, does this sound real to you, Dave? A fun, funky shorebird, chubby and long-billed with a striped head, outrageous mottled plumage of brown, rust, and tan, and pale suspenders down its back, as well as googly eyes.
High on the forehead. No, this sounds like a cartoon.
Right? Is Sarah Hobart messing with me?
It's possible.
Right?
In Scouts, we used to call it a left-handed smoke shifter, the thing that we would send people on. And there'd be kids running around looking for the left-handed smoke shifter, and there's no such thing. Maybe Sarah is toying with us.
Yeah. My greatest fear is that I'm going to spend all day in Trinidad or something with binoculars looking for a snipe, and I will have to explain that, yeah, I fell for it. But she's got some great pictures, and if you go online, there are more pictures.
Awesome.
And they're really cool looks at these birds that, honestly, I didn't realize had such variety. And these are kind of the glamour birds of the bunch, so it's lovely. And for a very different vibe at the beach, Mike Kelly. His washed up column this week is called Foam Club. And he has taken a Fight Club approach to teaching us about foam. I won't spoil it. Just know.
It's hysterical.
It's going to get weird. So those shorebirds running along, sometimes they run through foam. Sometimes you go to the beach and you're like, what is all of this? And so you were telling me before we started, Dave, that apparently a giant ball of foam or a wave of foam covered a hotel in Florida?
Yes, it was a spoom wave.
That's too much.
Yes.
Too much foam.
Yes.
Much foam.
Too much foam. Yeah. So, but before you get a panic that this is some sort of like natural disaster, it's actually not unless you're paying for that hotel room. The foam is in fact not necessarily toxic. A lot of people think it is because, it's weird rainbow looking foam that looks like soap. It is in fact made of fats, sugar, bacteria, pollen, wood polymers, fungi, and as he says, the residue of pretty much anything that breaks down in the ocean. I would like to caution people who are way too into health fads to know that doesn't mean that you should put it on your food.
Right.
This is not like a spirulina thing. Don't do it. It also might contain fungal and algal spores, and it might contain any kind of pollutants if the water in the area is polluted. But now you know what that weird foam is at the beach. I encourage you to read Mike Kelly's column for the full breakdown.
Yeah, Mike is dropping knowledge through prose, so it's definitely a recommended read. Thanks so much, Jen. We appreciate you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this week, guys. This was a lot of fun. North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up. Stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you can check them out anytime. Again, Thad, Jen, we appreciate you in a big way. Thanks out there for listening, and we will connect with you all again next week. Take care till then. Bye, guys.